Welcome everybody to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, we're going to be talking about the hemp industry. And with me is Derek Spruill. He is the director of sales over there, as well as director of research and development, a co-founder. And I mean, you're wearing lots of different hats, it sounds like. Welcome to the show, Derek.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so like every entrepreneur out there, you get to do a lot of different things when your business is starting and growing. And so we're going to get into that backstory as well as what Cherry Blossom Hemp is all about. But first, I wanted to ask you, what are 3 things that you think every entrepreneur needs to know?
Oh, what every entrepreneur needs to know. What drives you personally? I think a lot of times people get into stuff on a feeling and not really taking the time to look at themselves and be like, where is my passion? Where is my drive? Where's my interest? Where's my aptitude? Aptitude may be more important than all of those things, honestly, but not necessarily getting too flighty about the business, but really have an understanding of who you are and what you can accomplish, what you can endure, what you can deal with, the nuances of your own personality. I think a full understanding of whatever industry that you are participating in. I'm speaking from my own experience, kind of falling back on both of those answers. It's like when we jumped into this, it was kind of like, oh, like this hemp thing, the CBD thing is new. And I've always kind of liked cannabis, it's always worked for me. And I think, this would be a great opportunity for us to help people and all this other stuff. But I don't know if we knew enough about the industry as a whole, which came kind of evident about a year later, when COVID was in full swing. I think had we been armed with a little more information and knowledge about our industry, we would have had a better start, I think, than we did. Third, doesn't matter what you're doing, know your numbers. Know your numbers. And I know that's boring. Sounds tedious. A lot of people hate math. I'm more of an English and social studies guy than math and science, if you will. I love science, but I can't say I'm great at it. Math is probably my weakest subject. Unfortunately, everything depends on math. And if you don't know your numbers, a lot of times you're just backed into that going on a feeling, and going on a feeling is not necessarily running a business.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs echo when I ask them the same question is know your numbers, get the books right. The financing part of it's really, really important for obvious reasons. And it is remarkable how many of us actually really struggle in that area because we all know how important it is, right? And so I myself at various times in my journey, I've definitely ignored those numbers at times. And boy, COVID really brought an extra focus on it. Well, when it came to cash flow analysis, because everybody was in the same situation where those first couple of months, like there was just no money circulating in the economy. It felt like anyway, for a lot of businesses. And so cash flow became such a critical thing. And I jotted down here one comment that you made there in one of as you were mentioning the 3, and that was know what you can endure. That was that's a really, really interesting statement. And that's not one that I've actually heard somebody articulate quite as concisely as what you did, but that is so true, isn't it?
Very true.
So now you guys started Cherry Blossom Hemp back in 2018, I think is what you mentioned. And so tell me a little bit about the business. What is it that you guys do there?
Well, we started off as Cherry Blossom Hemp. And honestly, like Cherry Blossom Hemp started off as a concept as Cherry Blossom Confections, and Cherry Blossom Confections, we were messing around in DC in kind of the gray market and kind of dealing with some of those guys. And like, hey, I think this candy thing we're doing is pretty good. And then it became Cherry Blossom Hemp. And because we were just doing like trading stuff, it was really more personal than anything, but then we kind of, we found the CBD company or a CBD manufacturer, went out to Oakland. We met with them, met with some of their money people. And they're like, yeah, we think we guys would do great on the East Coast. And that was probably at the end of 2018. And then we spent most of 2019 just kind of like shopping, ordering, preparing, getting marketing material together. And I officially launched in August of 2019. And then 6 months later, we're in COVID. So We start
Yeah.
off with like every other CBD company because we're under the understanding, right, of our industry totally, is that you had to have certain products to compete in this industry. So you had to have a tincture or two. You had to have some capsules. You had to have some vapes. You had to have some pet stuff. You know, no one's going to talk to you if you don't have all these things. And as it turns out, I am not really that suited to sell pet stuff. You know, there's a certain culture in the pet community that, you know, I've had pets, but I can't say that I'm a pet. You know, I don't live and die by my animals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, I see people as more important. Call me crazy. You know, I'd rather. And I just don't get it. I don't get it. Like, I get it, but I don't get it to that extent.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this isn't for me. I'm not communicating with them. They're not really receiving, you know, what I'm saying. So then we sort of stopped focusing on that. Long story short, we realized that vape-able extracts and vape-able full spectrum extracts, it was like sort of like the future, I think, of cannabis. As people move forward and into more non-smoking spaces, vapes are still kind of looked at as okay. Younger generations don't really care to combust. That seems like that's something that's my parents and grandparents did. So, and saw how the cartridges and everything were sort of taken off. So in 2021, last year, like we had spent most of that year like designing this plan to become a manufacturer, producer, extractor, if you will, in North Carolina. We bought a property, we were doing all this stuff, and then extract prices just bottomed out. This is not knowing your industry, not know where things are going, looking at Delta 8 and ignoring it. Like, no, like we don't, no, that's not who we are, even though there was plenty of opportunity there. So, and we decided that, you know, we're going to focus on live resin hemp. I think one of us, like, we tried it as like a dab and gave it to the other one. And it was like, whoa, like all these things that I've been using cannabis for are here. And I could keep my head, I could be clear throughout the day. It's like, I can't be the only one that this benefits. Like, this is, you know, how come no one else is talking about this? Well, a few people are, but not as many people are, especially on the East Coast. So that's the way we went. Now we sell vapeable and dabbable live resin hemp extracts, which to clarify that, most cannabis flowers of any kind, CBD or THC, are dried and cured for the purpose of smoking. Even the ones that are extracted, most times they're extracted from dried and cured products. But a live product, especially a live resin or rosin, those flowers are taken right off the plant, flash frozen within an hour of harvest. That way there's no plant deterioration. You think of like what happens to your peas when they're frozen, and they taste like peas, you know? So all the benefits are concentrated, but, you know, once you remove the plant matter, it also makes it vapeable. And so you have this concentrated, full, loaded with cannabinoids, terpene-rich extract that's tasty, that's healthier than smoking, of course, you know, and loaded with medicinal benefits that you can get in 5 minutes, and without having to worry about the weight or the distraction of THC. Understand that, like, THC and marijuana got us here. Like, no one started smoking hemp when we were younger, you know? It all became from there, and then we discovered this. There was really only one place to get cannabinoids. If we understood cannabinoids were medicine, and we believe that, there was only one other place to get them, and that was in marijuana. But now that we have this thing, this hemp, and it's not like, we all thought hemp was just for like bags and t-shirts and stuff, like growing up, you know, there's like this novelty thing that, you know, no one can really, you know, manufacture or produce on a large scale, but somehow like these shirts and stuff there. But come to find out, it's marijuana's biological cousin. Everything is there that's in marijuana, except that like hemp is high in CBD, low in THC. Marijuana is just the opposite. So I don't think everyone wants to be high all the time. I don't think everyone wants, I think most people who even use THC, I think we're all probably treating something, you know. It's like, I think I read it means like a therapist and a massage and all these things sort of wrapped in one, you know. So that appeals to a lot of people. I think that people would feel, I think, I'll say it a different way. People have been looking to marijuana or THC as that's where all the benefits are. Everything I'm getting is coming from that source. But come to find out, most of the things are just coming from like non-intoxicating plant compounds, you know?
Yeah.
That's really giving you most of the things that you feel like in your head, your face, your arms, your torso. It's not necessarily the THC, but those are the benefits that are hitting you. The things that get you calm, the things that kind of stroke you when you're in traffic or you're in a stressful situation. But now you can enjoy those things. Let's say you got to give a presentation. You can go out and hit this live resin hemp vape and come back, and your anxiety's down, you're more focused, you're calm, and you're not high and distracted. And more so, you have not lost the credibility of.
Yes. So when it comes to, like the legalization of cannabis across, the US as well as in Canada, I know it's spotty in the US still, but it's still, that movement is afoot in more and more states all the time. Has that fueled then a lot better understanding of CBD, or is it something that is distracting, I guess, away from CBD? So how do you perceive that?
I feel as more states and jurisdictions open up, their laws to whether medicinal or recreational, it opens a conversation up for this.
Yeah.
Because these two plants have been tied together in the minds of most people and the minds of law enforcement for about almost 100 years. Like hemp and marijuana are not just botanical cousins, but in our minds, they're totally connected.
Yeah.
What we see a lot is it depends on age. Like people think that, well, this is going to get me high. It's going to get me high, and there's still that belief system because of that connection. Come to find out, this lady told me this a couple weeks ago. She was a boomer, and she says, she was really fascinated by the fact that hemp wasn't getting her high. And she's like, this year, I really learned something today. And I says, really? And she's like, yeah. So you have to understand, when I was younger, we would say we were going to get a bag, one of the terms that we would use, one of the slang terms, we're going to get some hemp. So a lot of people still think, especially from the Nancy Reagan days, that hemp really does get people high. So
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So more conversation is good for business, right? Because people start to then understand the nuances then between the two and start to pick out the one that they want.
Yes. And I think, both of these things can exist together. Just because you use marijuana doesn't mean that hemp can't be beneficial to you at certain times of day. Some people have alcohol and cannabis, but you don't necessarily use them at the same time nor at the same times of day,
Yeah.
So you can get benefit just in the same way. I think that I don't think it's a one or the other thing with people. I think there's space for both of these plants in people's lives. If you believe in this in cannabis.
Yeah. So you saw an opportunity then as you were discovering the benefits of CBD, and that's what really stimulated then the growth of the business. What have been some of the challenges, I guess, that you had to overcome? Because you did mention, I wish that I maybe would have known a little bit more about the industry going into it. So what were some of those things that you discovered where it's like, oh man, this would have been a good thing to know earlier on?
So first, where the extract prices were going when we got started. It seems like things had peaked in the, we talk about just CBD, things had peaked around the time we got started. And then the big disruptor was coming in, which was Delta 8. I wish we had done some more homework and learned about all of these things and made a more educated decision about where to go from the beginning. I can't say COVID enough, but no one saw COVID coming. So there's nothing that we could have done about it. It's funny because the lessons are still coming in some ways. I figured that, we were mostly online and the world was going online. So why is everybody ordering my product? I don't have a store, but in this space, people want to touch, see, feel. I think because of some of the unknown, they want to go in, they want to talk to someone, they want to get some sort of guidance if you don't know, but also if you do know, you want to kind of trust your own judgment before you purchase. We didn't totally get that.
So do you have a physical location now then where you're selling?
We are working on it. We just kind of go around and get accepted where we are, and that was done on purpose before we could figure out where where in this area, in this geographic area, or in the DC metropolitan area, we appreciated the most. And sometimes there were places we thought we'd be appreciated where we weren't, and then the exact opposite, where we didn't think we were. So like, all this has been good for us. It's just time for us to settle in and have a home. That's all. Yeah.
Interesting. So now, at the stage in which you're at now, so you're 4 years-ish into the business, what is the things, I guess, that are easier now for you than what it was in those early days?
Dealing with disappointment, for sure. Yes.
Yeah, that's just being an entrepreneur.
Yes, like you learn to take punches. You learn to expect punches, really.
Yeah.
And so Pollyannish about, I had this idea and it's just going to work, and then one day money's going to start raining down on me. That doesn't generally happen to not immediately anyway. That generally some time. So I think that's a lot of it. I learned a lot about sales. Like, it's only me and Larry. So what you're better, prepared to do, what your aptitude says you should be doing, and what my aptitude says I should be doing. I wasn't a big believer in social media when this whole thing started. And COVID really, like, it forced me to change my outlook on it.
Yeah.
I thought I had to be a buffoon, to be liked and appreciated on social media. Like, that's what works, like the algorithm, no matter how often it changes, it only likes about 6 things. It's like pets, food, buffoonery, white girls dancing. You know what I mean? Like, so like, what else? It doesn't matter how many times you change the algorithm, it always likes those things, so so people falling and doing, drug stuff, they love this stuff. So I don't know, trying to figure all that out, and just kind of stepping back from my preconceived whatever's about social media, and trying to see it for something different. It's not just a playground. Like, if you really focus in on it, and focus yourself, and focus on your message, and be like, it really can be a good tool. And I think we're just starting to kind of see some of the fruit of that effort.
Yeah. As long as you're being strategic about it, right? And that's one of the challenges that a lot of businesses have, is that they don't approach it strategically. They just think that this is a platform for them to push messaging out onto, like a billboard, right? And you have to have that two-way communication. You have to be building that community, because that's really what is the power of social media, and what the interest or desire is amongst the people who are in it. So it's really important to understand how to leverage it as an actual tool. What do you think at this stage, like today, what is it that you're doing right, that you're killing, that is really, helping you find that success?
I'm pretty critical on all this whole thing. Like, if there's a critic, the Pollyannish doesn't really live in me as much. Like, I will see there's something wrong, and that's a lot of, like, it's not a lot of this, it's a lot of this. It's like, if something wrong and y'all calling me the leader, then there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Say that question one more time.
Just what is it that you're killing right now? At this stage in your business. Yeah.
Our message is being refined.
Yeah.
This practice of going around and setting up tables and not knowing who's going to show up, and learning, like, different objections, at the drop of a hat, seeing how these products work for other people, even in the immediate. It's really been just such a, it's helped us. It's helped us craft that message. Like, I think we're so much better now than we were even 6 months ago, and communicating what we do and why we think that you on the other side of this table should be using these products.
Yeah. So critical, isn't it? To really understand how to frame things so that the other person, that you're talking to gets it. And I mean, you're the director of sales over there. And so you're obviously having those conversations day in and day out, right?
Yes.
But it is like, when you can say something and you watch them, if you can physically see their eyes, and you see that, just the glimmer in the eye, and it's like, that was something that resonated. Yeah, I'm going to use that again.
Yes. And sometimes like, people actually say to me like, oh, wow, I'm sold. Like, what is better than that? Like, not because of the exchange of money for product.
Yeah.
It is the exchange of information for enlightenment. Like, that's really the like, yes, like you're getting it. Like we're not just out here talking. Like it's just not falling on deaf ears. Like people are actually what's going on in here, and they're getting it. Like, oh, this is what you're trying to say. Yes, this is what we're trying to say.
Yeah. So it sounds like you do a lot of education as part of your sales process then. Is that correct?
It has to be.
Yeah.
People don't always recognize what these products are when you walk up to the table.
Yeah.
So I have a cousin, he does vending also. He's out, and he's trying to find his home as well. And he sells cigars. No one questions what he has when they walk up to it.
Yeah, they understand.
If there is a way that I'm envious of him, it's that. It's like there's no real having to educate. It's just sales. Do you want this? Do you want this? There's a little education. There is, because there's different levels and flavors of cigars. But other than that, for people who like cigars can look at that booth from across the room and say, hey, I want to be a part of that. Yeah. People generally come by ours and we're sort of like, oh, what's that? You know what I mean? And like, tell me about what you got going on. So we had to do the spiel for a couple minutes, and it's good, but it's really helped us being able to do that. Like it helps the whole messaging thing. It's almost like being an actor where you just say a line enough times where I get it now.
Yeah. So now what if an angel investor were to, come by and drop, let's just say $1 million in your lap and said, okay, now take this $1 million and fuel your company. What would you be doing to maximize your growth with that $1 million? What's the first thing or two that you'd be doing?
Half of it would go into some sort of bank or something for a rainy day. The other half, I would have some strategically placed retail locations, but focus a lot on this wholesale that we're producing right now. So we're working on that, trying to find we're working on finding the kitchen space, which is getting harder to find. So finding our own place, maybe some place where we can produce and sell out of the same building.
Yeah. I'm curious about inspiration as well. Like when it comes to entrepreneurs, they find inspiration in so many different ways. And like you were talking about earlier around, we endure a lot as entrepreneurs. And so you have to continually, go back to a place where you can be inspired. What inspires you as an entrepreneur?
Why do you say it that way? Go back to a place, because you do kind of get to a lot of stopping points where you're just like, I just don't know if all this is worth it sometimes. And then you talk to yourself and you keep going. The inspiration, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always looked at, even on like TV, like you look at these people. George Jefferson was like my hero when I was a kid, because like you were this guy who was from these really, the places where no one makes it, and then you make it, you're just like, and I'm living in this high rise, and it was like just the story of it. I didn't even need to watch the show, but the story of it was like
moving on out.
Like, yes, it wasn't Beverly Hillbillies. Like you just fell on some oil, you know what I mean? Like you actually worked your way there. And it was always like, yes, it was, I want to be able to tell my story one day, not because I want the glorification, but I want there to be a story to tell. Yeah. And I want to not be here because someone saw something in me and was like, I'm going to open this door for you. You know what I mean? And your life is going to be different now because of me. That generally happens somewhere along. There are people who impact our career in that way. Yeah. But not like me opting into your job and then growing into that. Like I need to be pushing my own vision, not someone else's vision. And that's really it. I have a family. I look at these people every day. My wife is probably, for you asked me that, most times, like the first thing out of my mouth is her. Like she's the inspiration. Like it's her, and trying to, I didn't do this till a little bit later in life. Like I started this in my 20s. Like I started this in my 40s, so yeah, this is all about like retirement and what the rest of our lives are going to look like after that. I need to prepare something for you because, hey, they're not really making jobs for 50-year-old people. Yeah. And I don't really think that this is the world that our parents and grandparents grew up in, where it's about getting a job and hanging out there or figuring something, working for someone for 30 years, and then you get a retirement party and a watch and all this stuff. Like, no, I think that if I'm going to be living decent in 10 years, I'm going to have to figure that out. And whatever's flowing into my bank account will have to be from my own effort. So that's really the inspiration.
Yeah. So kind of continuing on with what some of the things that you're talking about there, what would be success to you? Like, how do you define success as an entrepreneur?
One, when I'm wearing less hats, that's a definitely step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Two, when I feel like there's enough sales being made and cash flow coming in where, hey, yes, I can pay my bills and have a little extra. Everyone here is getting paid. I'm not stressed about how I'm paying any sort of employees. And at that point, I can just step back and focus on growing the business and not necessarily bolts. I'm not necessarily, cracking and scrambling eggs here. Like, I'm just trying to promote and create opportunity for other people. When I'm just rainmaking, I will know that this is going in the right direction. Yeah, that's
amazing, right? Like, it's so interesting, the journeys that we're on, and how we define things differently in terms of what success might look like. But I'm with you on that. Like, it's just, for me, success is when things are running smoothly, right? I didn't, everybody wants to be making money, but I don't have this dream to be the next Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whatever. My dream is that I have time freedom. I mean, that's what I want. And so to build a system, a business that's going to generate wealth, that I don't have to necessarily be in the day-to-day all the day, like every day.
Right.
And that's where you need that scale, like you're talking about, hiring more people, so you're not wearing those hats, so you can focus on other aspects of either the business or your life.
Because and I always say this going in, it's about lifestyle. It's not about the money per se. The money does contribute, or the money does enhance, contribute, push. Born from the lifestyle is born from the money in a sense. But it's really about having the options to do the things that you want to do. If you wanted to plan a trip to, I don't know, south of France in 6 months, like, you shouldn't have to go and ask your boss if you can leave in 6 months. Like, it's your life. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
if you could write yourself a letter and send that back to, the Derek who started this business in 2018, what would be in that letter then when you start to do this reflection? That
stay focused, young man. Stay focused. Yes. Sometimes every shiny, there are sometimes things are just shiny things. And shiny things are really just, sometimes they're ideas, sometimes they're like opportunities, sometimes it's crypto, sometimes like all these things are not necessarily meant to be pursued. Not all good ideas, not even great ideas, are meant to be pursued.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to stick to what you're doing and understand that it may not be your time yet, but if you understand that you have a good product or a good service and you truly believe it, and you understand, you really believe and understand that I'm not going to be the only one that believes it, but sooner or later the public's going to believe it.
Yeah.
It's hard to stay in that mindset when you don't feel like you're making the income or making the sales or having the connection with people that you believe that you should. But I have to, there's no way I could be an actor, right? But I have to always think about what an actor goes through.
Yeah.
It's constant. Your whole career is based on someone else's opinion of you, really.
Yeah.
Everything you do, it's like the director's opinion of you, the producer's opinion of you, the casting director's opinion of you, the press's opinion of you, the public's opinion of you. And putting yourself out there to be judged and criticized, it's not really just for actors. Like, it's almost like you have to have this belief that, today everyone thinks I suck, but like, I know I'm getting better. I know I'm skilled. I know I can compete with, or hang or work in a team with these people or these top actors. And until you get the opportunity to do that, you're still going to be looked at as just some other name. You're just, who cares who you are, right?
Yeah.
But sooner or later, someone's going to recognize it.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you bring that up because so focus has been something that I've been not really gifted with, at least not in this stage in my life. I think at different stages in my life, I've been much more focused than what I have been in this business. And it's because, I deal in marketing. And so there's just so many things that you have to know and understand, and so many different things that are happening, whether it's social media or other tactics and how technology is playing a role in it. And so I get distracted quite easily. So I totally agree with you that focus is so critical, but staying the course, which is kind of what you were saying there, where I think that's a really important thing. And I was having a conversation with my son actually just this week, or maybe it was last week or on the weekend. And we were just talking about my career, and, my trajectory and what I was doing, at a younger age out of university. And, just going to walk through all the different jobs that I'd had and so on. And I'd switched industries very much, like reinvented myself in kind of 3 different stages of my life. And it was interesting because as I was reflecting on that, it's had I just stayed in one lane, so to speak, one industry, and really just stayed committed to that and wasn't distracted, stayed that course. I mean, my role within it could change. I could have started a business in that particular industry, but I switched completely outside of that. Would I have been more successful or not? That was the question that my son was asking me, right? And it was an interesting conversation because it did get me reflecting on that. And so I think that's one thing that entrepreneurs are gifted with, in the sense that we can pivot and we accept change, we can take on risk and so on, way better than I think the general population can.
No doubt.
But at the same time, it can be that curse. And so, so if I were to go back in time myself, I think I would have said, find an industry that you enjoy, and then find your opportunities within that. Because what was happening for me is when I would make those big shifts, I lost my network kind of as I was going in the shifting, because I had to rebuild, that center of influence that I had from the industry that I was in before.
And it says something like you said, you're willing to do that. You're willing to start over. You're willing to take that chance. Like I could just scrap the slate clean, and just start over. It's almost like a stop me if you can kind of attitude.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. They're very interesting. Well, thank you so much, Derek, for sharing your story with us and your thoughts. And if somebody wanted to learn more about Cherry Blossom Hemp and what you guys are doing over there, what's the best way for them to do so?
You go on our website, www.cherryblossomhemp.com. We are all on social media. We're doing a lot of educational videos. So the education doesn't just happen at the booth. So we try to extend the education to YouTube, Facebook. I'm not as much into Instagram and TikTok, but we're better about that. I think we're more received on like LinkedIn and YouTube, definitely. Yep. So we got a lot of videos. You got questions about hemp or live resin. Usually we've probably done a topic on it. So check us out, info at Cherry. If you have questions, you can reach us at blossomcbd.com. We may not answer you in 5 minutes, but we'll definitely get back to you.
Awesome. Sounds great. And just for the audience, they don't realize this, but we're recording this on the Wednesday before American Thanksgiving. And so have a wonderful Thanksgiving down there, Derek.
You too.
I hope that you guys have a big family to pull together and friends, and you can, just share that thankfulness that is so important to reflect on at this time of year.
Nice thing. You guys celebrate up there in Canada? Or?
We do. Yeah. Our Thanksgiving is in October though, actually. So we're about a month earlier for some reason. Yeah. I don't know why they do that, but but we still get all the benefits of the Black Friday and Cyber Monday craziness that happens at your time of the year. So that's our celebration of your Thanksgiving.
You guys just don't want to be like us. That's all. You're like, you got different.
We got to be different.
We got to be different.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. And for those of you who are listening, if you enjoyed this episode, check out the archives over at amplifyyourbusiness.ca. And if you're watching this and would prefer to be listening to it, we are available on all your major podcasting platforms. So head over to your favorite one and search Amplify Your Business. You're going to find us there. Until next time, everybody have a prosperous day and happy Thanksgiving, Derek.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, man. Thank you, Lance.